Namaskar friends, welcome to the standard 11th chapter 3, that is plant kingdom, and in the part 7 here we are going to complete the entire chapter. In the previous videos we have already seen about algae, bryophytes, pteridophytes, gymnosperms and angiosperms. In this one we are going to study about the plant life cycle and alteration of gametophytic and sporophytic generation. So, welcome to Vigyan with Vishal Mulya. Welcome to Biology with Vishal Mulya. Coming to the point, in the plants, the both haploid condition as well as diploid condition can divide by mitosis. And here you can see the haploid spores are going through the mitosis process and giving rise to haplontic plant or haploid plant. Similarly, even the diploid cells is also going through the mitosis and giving rise to the sporophytic generation. The ability of the plant to give rise to this both haploid and diploid condition or haploid and diploid body is producing various kind of life cycles and alteration of generation. This is given in the very compact way in the textbook in the 3 or 4 different sentences. Let me simplify this sentences. There are two kind of life cycle, two kind of plant body. First is gametophytic plant body. This gametophytic plant body is represented by haploid cells or haploid set of chromosome. It is producing gametes by mitosis, and these gametes are the fertilization is going on and producing zygote. This zygote is diploid. Zygote is giving rise to sporophytic plant body. This sporophytic plant body is diploid. It is produced from the mitosis of the zygote, and this zygote this entire sporophytic plant body is giving rise to haploid spores by meiosis, means the reductional division. The haploid spores is giving rise to gametophytic plant body, and this gametophytic plant body part is again continuing the entire life cycle. This is how the alteration of generation is happening. According to the textbook, in the life cycle of any sexually reproducing plant, there is an alteration of generation between gametophytic generation and sporophytic generation. Here you can see whatever the red part is there, that is the sporophytic generation, while the green part is gametophytic generation. So both are alternating in the sexual reproduction, and this phenomena is known as alteration of generation. It is appearing in almost all sexually reproducing organisms, and here it is very precise. However, different plant groups are showing, as well as even different individual is representing in a different pattern, in a different way, and this different pattern can be ultimately represented by haplontic life cycle, diplontic life cycle, and haplo-diplontic life cycle. Let me see the schematic diagram which is shown in the textbook. Here it is haplontic life cycle, the next is diplontic life cycle, and third one is haplo-diplontic life cycle. But unfortunately in the compact way it is very difficult to understand. So let me start with haplontic life cycle. To show how exactly the haplontic life cycle is, we have an imaginary schematic presentation of the haplontic life cycle. Here the dominant one, which is doing the photosynthesis, the one which is long lasting, is haploid plant having single set of chromosome. It is producing or it is going through mitosis and producing male gametes and female gametes. This male gametes and female gametes are unite and giving rise to zygote. Do remember, zygote is diploid in condition and it is representing sporophytic generation. Immediately this diploid zygote is going through the meiosis, that means the reductional division, and producing spores, that is haploid, and this spores by mitosis again giving rise to haploid plant. So this is the life cycle where you can see the dominance of gametophytic generation, and in the textbook sentence the sporophytic generation is represented only by the one-celled zygote. Even a real zygote you can see, and you can see in the life cycle it is presented by only one cell. If you see the real sense, in the real sense the zygote, it is not free living entire plant body, it is just simple a cell. So dominating is the haploid condition. Meiosis in zygote is resulting in the formation of haploid spores, and these haploid spores are divided mitotically to form the entire gametophyte. The dominant of the photosynthetic phase in such kind is free living gametophytic generation, which is haploid in nature. That's why this kind of life cycle is known as haplontic life cycle. Such kind of life cycle is presented by algae like Volvox, Spirogyra, and some of the member of Chlamydomonas species. Let me go through the life cycle of Volvox as a one example or one representative one. In the life cycle of Volvox, the dominating one is the colony. This colony is giving rise to female gamete, that is the ovum, by the mitosis. Likewise, it is giving rise to male gamete by the mitosis. After giving rise to the ovum and antherozoid by mitosis, the fertilization is occurring, and fertilization is resulting into diploid zygote. This zygote is nothing but it is sporophytic generation represented by one single cell. It is not independent entire plant. This zygote is immediately going to the reductional division, meiosis, and producing haploid zoospores, and this haploid zoospores after dividing giving rise to daughter colony ultimately, which is completing the life cycle. So this is how the dominating one is haploid condition, while the sporophytic condition is represented by only zygote, which is having one cell. This similar kind of life cycle is there in the Spirogyra and in the some of the member of Chlamydomonas. In the videos where we are going to discuss about the detail, you will be finding it in the NEET level videos coming very soon. The next one is diplontic life cycle. In the contrary to the haplontic life cycle, here the diploid sporophytic phase is dominant one. This diploid dominant sporophytic phase is doing photosynthesis, it is independent one. And to represent it, let we have the example of flowering plants. Either you can take gymnosperm or angiosperm, but here we have immediately seen the angiosperms in the previous video. So let me go through the life cycle of angiosperms, which is having two different phases, and the dominant one is sporophytic phase represented by flowering part. This flowering part is having male sex organ, that is the stamen. Stamen is having anther. Anther is having pollen sac, and pollen sac is producing spores by reductional division. The spores or microspore or pollen is giving rise to male gametophyte by mitosis, and this male gametophyte ultimately require female gametophyte. Female reproductive organ is pistil or carpel, that is having megaspore mother cell, and this megaspore mother cell is giving rise to megaspore, which is resulting into ultimately embryo sac, and embryo sac is representing gametophyte, which is having egg cell. We have already discussed in the previous video. The fusion of egg cell and male gametophyte is resulting into diploid zygote. Zygote is going through the mitosis and giving rise to embryo, which is diploid, and ultimately this embryo within the seed is ultimately giving rise to entire new plant, and that is diploid in nature. So the dominant one is sporophyting, and in another word, the gametophytic phase is represented by single or few celled haploid gametophyte. Here the female gametophyte can be seen, that is the embryo sac, and even you can see the female gamete, that is egg cell, and likewise male gametophyte, that is pollen, which is having male gametes, which is there in the lower side. So this kind of life cycle where the dominant one is diploid phase is termed as diplontic life cycle, and this diplontic life cycle is presented by gymnosperms and angiosperms, and in another way you can say they are the higher plants. So this is what you can say diplontic life cycle. Then there is a mixing of both haplo-diplontic life cycle. This haplo-diplontic life cycle is the what you can say middle condition or intermediate condition where Bryophyte and Pteridophyte are representing this type of haplo-diplontic life cycle. So here both life cycle is having multicellular condition. So both is having multicellular condition, both are having a free living condition, but it is little bit having difference. Like in the Pteridophyte, the dominant phase is sporophyte, while the haploid condition is represented by very small gametophytic condition. One can see both in the arrow with the arrow. Green one is gametophyte, while the red one arrow is showing the sporophytic condition. Contrary to this, there is some change in the Bryophyte. In the Bryophyte, sporophyte is dependent on gametophyte, and gametophyte is more dominating, but both are having multicellularity. Whatever the difference is there, to understand it in detail, let me go through the haplo-diplontic life cycle in Bryophytes. A dominant or independent or photosynthetic, thalloid or erect phase is represented by haploid gametophyte in the case of Bryophytes. In the case of Bryophyte, haploid gametophyte is alternating with the short-living multicellular gametophyte, which is totally or partially dependent on the gametophytic generation for anchorage, for water and minerals. Let me go through the detail of the life cycle of Bryophyte represented by Mertensia. Here in the Mertensia, the dominant thallus or dominant phase is haploid one. This haploid one is having capacity to reproduce by itself also through the vegetative reproduction, but we will go through the sexual one. So male gamete and female gamete are produced on the special structure, that is the male stalk and female stalk anthero, and that is having the detailed structure, the special structure which is having antheridial cavity and archegonial cavity. This antheridial and archegonial cavity is present in the antheridial and archegonial disc. We will see it in the NEET level videos, or you can see this in the previous videos. It is already there. They produce the gametes, and these gametes are fusing in the presence of water because they are the amphibians, and the fusion of the gamete is resulting into zygote. Zygote is diploid in nature. Zygote is representing sporophytic condition, and zygote is giving rise to complete sporophytic multicellular structure, which is producing spores by reductional division, and these spores are ultimately with the help of mitosis giving rise to new gametophyte. So in toto, the entire life cycle is presented by haploid condition, where the diploid multicellular sporophyte is also there, which is dependent on the haploid. Here you can see the red one is diploid, while the green one is presenting the haploid condition. All the Bryophytes are showing this kind of pattern. which is Haplo-diplontic life cycle. Comparison to this, there is some difference in the Pteridophytes, though it is Haplo-diplontic life cycle. The diploid sporophytic phase is representing dominant one, independent, photosynthetic. It is having vascular body. I mean, the xylem and phloem is there. It is having root, stem, as well as leaf also, or leaves. And further detail you can see in the previous videos where Pteridophytes are described. This diploid sporophytic generation is alternating with the multicellular. Gametophyte is multicellular. It is either saprophytic or autotrophic, independent, but it is very small, very small and short-lived. So such kind of condition is also Haplo-diplontic life cycle, which is shown in Pteridophytes. Coming to the very interesting variation in the alga, most of alga is of course representing the haploid haplontic life cycle, where the dominant one is the haploid phase and diploid phase is represented by only zygote. But there are certain examples where the haplo-diplontic life cycle is existing. Say for example in Ectocarpus, Polysiphonia, and member of Phaeophyceae, that is calbs. Here you can see the seagrass calbs, Polysiphonia, and you can see Ectocarpus also. Fucus is the one which is showing diplontic life cycle. Here the haploid phase is very reduced, so diplontic life cycle is there, and fucus is something special you can see here in the photograph. So dear friends, this is all about the various kind of life cycles in the plant and alteration of generation of sporophytic condition and gametophytic condition. With this we are coming to the end of the chapter. Thank you very much. Dhanyavad. Jai Hind. Jai Bharat.